that I am very excited about Gentrie Lemerond being here today. She is a very dear friend. I've actually been to her house a couple of times and met her whole family, gone out for supper with her, have watched her children grow up into beautiful, beautiful people, and been witnessing Gentrie's growth as well. We've known each other probably what about at least 7 years? At
I
least seven
think
years,
so.
right?
It's been a
Yeah, it's
while
been a
now.
while. Yeah. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of a bio of her as well. She's a spiritual quilter who has been quilting for about 25 years, and she doesn't really care about following patterns. I love that because who likes to follow the norm, right? She mostly sketches out the patterns she wants to make based on the fabric she's purchased. And sometimes, excuse my language, sometimes that comes back and bites her in the ass. What she's really she totally changed my personal view on how I sew, how I quilt, how I do artwork, how I do photography, and so many other bits and pieces. And it's really with so much passion and love in my heart that I introduce you to this beautiful soul, Gentrie Lemerond. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. So,
It is.
so my background, as you said, I've been quilting for probably at least 25 years. I mean, it's been a while. So, um, even when the gal who is teaching me how to quilt was teaching me how to quilt, I had problems following patterns. I am not a very good follower. Um, so very early on, when I first started quilting, I started sketching out my own patterns and making my own quilts. And it was definitely a learning process. Um, because I was new to it, I made tons of mistakes, and had to rip stuff out. Our love of our seam ripper. So having to make corrections. But as my spiritual journey continued and as my quilting journey continued, eventually they came together and had a collision of sorts. So I had heard comments. What started my journey really was somebody commenting to me about how much they loved the quilt I had given them. That when they used the quilt that I had given them, it made them feel good. Like, that was the feeling they got from it. So, um, excuse me. um, that's what got me thinking about energy and quilting and energy and artwork and anything, actually, anything you create, the energy behind it. Thinking about walking through art galleries and why you slowly are walking past, looking at pictures, you're like, oh, nice, oh, nice. And then boom, you stop in front of a painting and it's just like, oh wow, and you can feel that, you feel that connection to it, and you notice these colors and you notice this thing and you're like ooh and ah, and if you think about what is it that makes you stop, what is it that makes you look at it, what is it, it's the energy you're feeling. It's not also the look of the painting and the style of the painting, but it's that energy that you're connecting with. It's connecting with you on your level. And that's what draws you to it. Um, Starting to think about those kinds of things. So that started my journey in energetic quilting. Unfortunately, quilting industry does not have a lot of recorded studies on virtually anything related to quilting. They haven't done studies on sales and marketing and things like that, much less how quilting affects people, one, as they are quilting, and two, as those quilts affect other people once they receive them. There's no documentation, no studies, no anything on that. So I started on a journey of doing my own study, essentially, and seeing if I could figure out if that really is a true statement, that the energy you put into a quilt really does affect somebody else. So that's where Healing Quilts started. I put out a call really to people who wanted to volunteer. I would make a healing quilt and send it to them with the booklet. And all they had to do was go through the booklet once a day, write down their observations while using the quilt, and then send the booklet back to me. And the response I got, I think there were 5 people who participated, and I think one person didn't notice anything. Where the other people, it was varied. One person actually had a disease where they were in constant pain, and seeing how it helped them, and then somebody else who just in her normal everyday life noticed a difference in, she would hang the quilt over the back of her chair while she was working, and she noticed a difference in her mood while she was working and how she handled things differently and things like that when she used the quilt. And then she would use it at night, and she said it would help calm her and relax her, and she could sleep easier, sleep better, because then she was in a calmed and relaxed state before she went to bed. The person who had constant pain, their observation was that for a while the quilt did help them, but then they felt that it had run out of its energy and didn't help anymore, which I don't know if that's a true statement, if something can really run out of energy, because everything's made from energy. Everything is energy in different forms. So maybe it was just not helping them enough anymore, or maybe it's that thing where kind of like being nose blind, you get energy blind. You're so used to it, being around you, that you start not to notice that it's there and that it's with you. So that's it. And I don't know, because that particular person, when I wanted to ask questions about that, wasn't very open to exploring those options and answering those questions. So from there, after Healing Quilts and that study, I started looking into pouring different energy into your quilting, and just being aware of what your energy level is when you're quilting, or when you're painting, or when you're creating whatever it is you create. Consciously clearing your space before you quilt or do your project, consciously grounding yourself before you start, thinking about the person. If you're making this thing for a specific person, thinking about that person specifically when you're making the quilt. How do you feel about that person? Are you making it for them for a specific reason? Is it just because you love that person and you think they should have this? Or is it because they're going through something and you want to be able to help with that? And it's just a token, but you can put specific energy into what you're doing. So then I started looking at different levels of infusing energy into your project. So There's the level of you're just making a quilt and you're happy to be making a quilt. And all that happy energy is going into the quilt you're making because you're enjoying the process. Then there's the level of actually channeling energy while you were quilting, saying a mantra, being conscious of the type of energy you want, that you want to pull in, channeling the energy through. We all use our hands when we're creating these things, and what great energy conduits our hands are. So picturing it, sitting before your sewing machine, picturing the energy flowing through you, through your hands, saying your mantra, and making the quilt. And it becomes, I find, very meditative when you're in that zone and you have the energy flowing. I find I don't have to be like constantly concentrating about energy coming through. Once that flow starts, it just flows. It just goes, and you're saying your mantra, and the mantra becomes something in the back of your head where it's just going through your head, you know, and you're thinking about it, you're sewing, which is a more intentional quilt and more energy infused. And I found those quilts that I intentionally thought about the energy, channeled the energy, had a greater impact. They had a much greater impact. That is also how I made the healing quilts, was with those thoughts in mind. You know, baby quilts, when you're making baby quilts for new moms and babies, you know, thinking about the love of that child, you know, the love people feel for them, the happiness that they bring to the family, the joy behind that, their health, and them growing up to be beautiful people, you know, infusing that energy into baby quilts. Because that, you know, those are the quilts that the babies end up dragging around behind them until they're, you know, 15 or something, or curled up and stuffed under their pillow while they're still sleeping when they're when they're older, because the quilt's obviously too small for them then. So
Can I pop on here and just
sure,
speak
go
to this for
ahead.
just a moment? You guys, I've been able to take part in at least one course that Gentrie has offered, and again, I emphasize it was really truly energy changing in the work that I was doing with the quilting. And because of her, the quilt that I created for my new granddaughter at the time, I actually connected in with a power animal that was hers, and literally it transform the energy of this whole quilt so beautifully. And because it was coming so much from my heart, like I can so understand how people were like, oh, your energy, like when that person was expressing it, it literally started that ball rolling for you. It is very, very powerful when you make that conscious decision. And the mantras also that Gentry provided in the course that I took were very beneficial too for grounding in. And it was almost like it was like there's the pattern or what have you that she provided, but it was also too like I could feel the energy being infused into the thread. I could feel the energy being infused into the intention, into the sewing machine, like the cutting even. It was so beautiful. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, yeah, that I did do courses. I had a few people take courses on energetic quilting. One of them was actually a painter, and did a painting through the course that I instructed her through. And I've done chakra quilts. I did a pattern for a chakra quilt, and there's mantras for each chakra level when as you make that piece of that quilt. Um, I've done all kinds of quilts. It's hard to keep track of them all. So, I've started actually my own company with pattern design, designing patterns. I've still do energy quilting for people. I do lap size or baby quilt size. I don't do a ton of them because they're time consuming. It takes time to make a quilt, to come up with the design and make them. 2 to 3 months, depending on the size of the quilt, is about as quick as you can turn one around. And some people aren't that patient to wait that long. They want it now in our world of instant gratification. So, um, but they do take time. I have, and they're available on my website to purchase if you're interested in one. But the most important thing is teaching people how to do it themselves. I mean, this is something you can do in your own home. They're starting to do studies now, but it's more focused on how quilting affects the quilter. And it's with anything you do, you're doing something you love. So when you're doing something you love, that has a positive effect on you, whether you realize it or not. Just the act of doing something you love heals your body, heals your mind, heals your spirit. And they're starting to tap into that. And sewing groups, the old quilting bees, we don't call them quilting bees anymore, but we still get together with our friends and sew and quilt and have quilt retreats and enjoy the camaraderie. And I find that there's a lot of joy and a lot of positive energy and connectedness in that. So when you're creating quilts in that environment, all that goes into that quilt that you're making because you're enjoying the time with your friends, you're laughing a lot, and being in that group setting with like-minded people who like to do the same thing you do really helps set that up. It is my goal one day to have specific quilt retreats that focus on energetic quilting, and teach some courses on, different ways of doing energetic quilting. I've come up with a new class that I would like to try out here in the near future that is a guided meditation. I guide you through a meditation to find certain things, certain aspects, certain characteristics, and you write them all down. And then I help you interpret those things into making blocks for a quilt. So you create a quilt from a guided meditation. And totally can be totally abstract or as literal as you want it to be, or, just fun, So
Let's dive into that a little bit. I've, like I said, I've known Gentry now for about 7 years and have watched her. Like, if for those of you, it's not apparent, she is a shaman, as myself is, and others in this group are. And I've sent her photos of all kinds of different quilts that I've seen all over the place because I'm like, oh man, Gentry's got to see this, Gentry's got to see that, right? And like there's just such a strong connection when you start to work with those material pieces for starters. And taking that a step further, I've really been witnessing how Gentry has and again, this is the reason why we're doing this whole summit, the All About Woo. It's that it's a learning curve for all of us. And in my coming back on to speak with Gentry and to share more about Gentry, it's to show you that there are steps that you can actively take. Gentry has had a dream for a very long time. I've known about this dream of the retreat for a very, very long time. And because she's been continually active in her creating the energy quilting part of it, the little pieces that have popped in and dropped in, and she actively has been pursuing that. She's getting closer to that. She had a really great opportunity last year that might have gone in a very specific direction towards accomplishing that bigger goal. However, it was also, there was a middle step that her guidance came in and delivered for her, that provided her with another opportunity that prepares her for this bigger opportunity. So that's kind of what I wanted to share, is that each of these steps that Gentrie is showing you, talking about, telling you about, are the little steps that move you on your journey towards whatever that biggest goal is. And Gentrie's big goal, it shifts, it changes, it's metamorphosizing, if you will, and it will become whatever it becomes. I can feel the energy of what it's going to be, and whatever it ends up being is going to be beautifully in alignment with who she becomes in the journey as well. Right,
Mhm.
Gentry?
Oh yeah, it's all a journey, life's a journey. It's if we're not learning, what are we here for? It's um learning learning to balance your life with what you love, bringing more of what you love in, learning different ways to accomplish what you want to do, and fun ways to incorporate different things into what you're doing. I'm constantly getting different ideas for classes and different ideas of, oh, we could do this, and what if we did this? And, it could bring so much more fun and energy into what we're doing. And, you know, let's be real, the more joy you have in your life, the more joyful and fun life is, Um, it's I'm fully aware my dream keeps shifting, and sometimes it does feel like it's just out of my grasp, like, oh, we're so close, we're right there. And then it goes whoop. And I'm on this other path learning something else. But like Sandra said, it's all the journey to get you where you need to go. And maybe I had one more lesson that I had to learn before I got that far, and your lessons change as you grow, because as
Mhm.
you're growing spiritually and in your craft, you those things you are learning are taking you on this other route. And now you need to know this lesson, because now you're heading this way, and now you've got to go to this lesson to be able to do that, you know. So we can all get stuck in that frustration sometimes of, man, when is this going to happen? But then also stepping back and talking to people like Sandra and other friends I have in the spiritual community that remind you it's all a journey, it's all a lesson. It will come when it's right in your life for it to come.
And I want to highlight something too. We're talking about this journey of, really watching Gentry and this beautiful energetic quilting. And um, even in our conversations leading up to the summit, I've been watching her growth over the last 8 or 9 months, uh, um, supporting her emotionally in whatever way that I can, as well as spiritually. And really, sometimes because we're so focused on that big picture of where we hope we're going,
Mhm.
we often forget those small little things that we know about, and that is those bits and pieces that are the pieces that tie us. I don't even know how to say this. Gentry is such a beautiful quilter. I've seen so many of her quilts. As I said, I've been in her home and I've seen her work in person. And uh, when you have a passion for something and you discover a way to bring it into your spiritual journey, it's almost like it feeds itself. It has a life of
Yeah.
its own if you're willing to tap into that, right, Gentry?
Oh, absolutely. It takes on a life of its own, because when you tie it into your spiritual connection and and connect those two things together, it it has a life of its own. Literally, you are putting that life into it, literally, energetically. So it does, you know, do its own thing around you without you even consciously being aware that this energy is doing this around you and filling your home, filling your space, surrounding you, and helping shift the energy you have to go where you need to go. You know, every quilt created energetically and consciously that stays in my home affects my home, and it affects my energy, and it changes the energy in my home. It changes my energy. It changes my trajectory on where I'm going and where my energy flows.
Mm.
I think it's become very clear to me that it's a very important piece that we should all be incorporating into our lives, into our artwork, into our creations, because without our even knowing it, it affects everything you do, and it affects everything around you. The previous speaker was talking about that, you know, the foundations of your home itself, the protections of your home. When you fill your home with all that energy, and those quilts are giving off that energy, or the artwork you did, or it just creates this big barrier, if you would imagine, in your walls inside your house, and you create this space that, you know, is whatever energy you're putting into there, whether it's warm and inviting and loving and joyous, or, you know, I've had relatives walk into my house and be like, I just love your house, you know. And I've lived in anything from really nice 3-bedroom basement houses to a trailer house. You know, I've lived in all sorts of houses, all different styles, sizes, and I have had people come in and say, I just love your house. I enjoy being here, you know, and that's not because of the home it is. That's because of the energy I've created in that home, that space. It's the quilts I created with intention and the energy I put into them that sit in my house and give off that energy. Yes, I do smudge my house. Yes, I do energetic work in my house, but I also, everything I create is created with an energetic intention of whatever. And then that fills my house with that purpose and that energy.
Can I go
So,
off on a tangent here for a moment? Because you said something
sure.
really, really powerful here. Like you're creating these things and they're in your home. What happens to those of us who are gifted something, or maybe it's what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe it's a family member who's passed away and we get gifted their quilts that their our moms, their grandmothers, what have you, have made for you or made for them. And the energy isn't quite there. You said something about smudging. Like, what do we do with those items that we're actually gifted?
Mhm. If you feel a bad energy on something, definitely smudge it. You know, if there's negative, which a quilt can have, you know, anything that's an heirloom from relatives or has been handed to you down from relatives or different people, or you get an estate sale or an auction house or something, you know, if you're buying something old and used like that, it can have negative energy attached to it, because if negative energy was in that space, in that house, it will absorb it. Anything will absorb those energies. As we well know, as energy workers, we're all in that space here. So we know that. Definitely smudge it, definitely cleanse it. As it sits in your home, it will absorb your energy. It will absorb the energy that's in your home, and that will override, I guess to use like a computer term, it will override all that negative energy in there, eventually. And that quilt will become just like other quilts you have. And if you use them, the more you use them, the more of your energy goes onto it. If it's something that's usable, um, laid over the end of your bed, or if it's something you can use every day, or those kinds of things, they will absorb your energy as you are using them. If you just fold them up and throw them in a closet, they're still going to absorb the energy around your house, but not as quickly
Yeah.
and not as much.
Yeah.
So,
That was very beautiful information for us to receive, because I know that for myself, I've gone into, like, say, an antique store, and
mhm,
before I was really aware, I used to be able to go in those with my mom all the time, and it's the same with my son. He was at some point unable to go into crystal stores because of the woo factor, right? And now, like, once he created, like we were talked about boundaries with the previous couple people, and it's that if you're storing them, maybe put them in a pink bubble, like energetically put them in a beautiful space, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. Who doesn't get lightheaded walking into a huge crystal store? I mean, seriously. You've got all these rocks and crystals in this one space, and it's like, whoo, your head just goes, whoa. I, for one, am one person. If I know I'm going into a store that has a lot of crystals and rocks and things that, which I do shop in those stores a lot, I put myself basically in a bubble before I walk in because it can be so overwhelming, all that energy of all those crystals. I don't know how those people work in those stores
Yeah.
that have a
Well,
lot.
I think some of them are oblivious, possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to what that energy, all that energy around them, it's there's been stores that I've walked into that it's just I get really lightheaded and dizzy and um it's the energy of
Yeah.
all those pieces. And they have their own energy, living energy as well as the fabric people create, you know.
So I want to ask you another question too, and please, everybody, start to ask your questions. Raise your hand with the react button down at the bottom. It'll say raise your hand, or write a question in the chat by all means. Do you incorporate crystals or feathers or this type of thing into your quilting work?
I do have a quilt that I did crystal beading on. It has I can never say the word Swarovski
Yeah.
crystals in it. I can never say his name correctly. um, they're beaded to the surface of the quilt. It's a wall hanging. Obviously, I wouldn't do that on a quilt that I use on my bed or something because how uncomfortable would that be? Having little crystals sticking you. Um, I have used feathers as talismans while
Okay.
I'm quilting if I have a specific intention, or crystals to help, specific crystals to help with whatever intention you're trying to set into a quilt. If it's healing, you want to use crystals that are more related to healing. If it's love, crystals that are related to love and help, magnify that. Definitely use things like that to help you as talismans to help you focus on that energy and bring that energy in because they bring that energy with them and you can tap into that energy and use it as part of your energy flowing through into the quilt. So,
Beautiful. I know that I added black obsidian into one of my granddaughter's quilts when I made it for her. There are a couple questions coming in. Maria, first, if you like there, Maria, you can bring yourself off mute, please. Hi, beautiful.
Um, Hi. No, I was just listening. And at first, it was just like I heard about quilting. I've never quilted, but then you really opened my mind talking about like other things that you can bring into your house. Like I have this big thing about furniture. I don't like to spend a lot of money on furniture, and I like to recycle and upcycle things. And that just like really lit a light in me of like how I feel about my hand-me-down things in my house and
Mhm.
how I can have that like it's not a like I don't want to spend money thing. It's that I have a vision for what I want in my house and it's hard to find what you're looking for, right? And it's
Right,
like I could make that. That just hit me like I could make my house feel like how you said people walk in, they're like, "I love
right,
your house." I want people to walk into my house, not just I love your house, but like your house feels like you. That's what I want for my home.
right.
And thinking about my wardrobe too, like I have all these amazing dresses, but I've lost like 8 dress sizes and they just don't feel the same on me anymore. Like I put it on and I was sad, but now I think about lovingly stitching some new things into them and taking the waist in and getting my dresses back. And so I just
Right.
wanted to thank you for like opening my horizon to that kind of stuff. It's really
Oh,
neat to
you're
think
welcome.
of energy in your clothes and your furniture and everything in your house. It's really nice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can modify or adjust the sizing in your dresses and use that energy to when you do that resizing of the love and joy you feel for the reason you have to take them in is because you've lost all that weight and celebrating that and putting that into your dress. So,
I want to say something about that too, is that I often buy clothes that maybe don't fit me in the ways that I would like them to, because I'm more of not necessarily a skinny jean person, but I'm not so much about the wide flare leg. And I'll buy the material, buy the jeans and I will sew the legs, but I'm energetically connecting with myself and the magic that I feel when I'm going to wear them. So thank you for bringing that up, Maria. Uh, Simone says that she has had problems going shopping for cloth, too many people and their energies and emotions. So how would somebody address that?
I suggest just like when you go into a crystal shop, put the bubble around yourself. Um, People who are really empathic and have to deal with energies a lot, um, you're probably familiar with that already, and you have to put a bubble around yourself, especially when you're going into places like that that have a lot of people, a lot of traffic. Everybody's touching everything. Me, I'm a fabric toucher. I have to touch it. I have to connect with it. I have a really hard time shopping for fabric online because I gotta see it. I gotta touch it. I gotta feel it. Um, it's a vibe for me. I walk down and I don't touch them as I'm walking down this, but I'll walk down the aisle and it's an energetic feeling. Yes, I'm looking at the fabric, but I'm also feeling for what's calling to me.
Mm.
It's like the fabric, reaches out to you and says, "Hey, hey, I'm yours," and you turn to it and it's like, "Ooh, I really like this." And you pick it up and you look at it and it's uh, tapping into that energy and that focus. And I think I've never had a problem with feeling other people's energy on the fabric. And I think that's because of putting that barrier up when you walk in. You're setting that intention that you don't want to feel everybody else's energy. You're not wanting to feel all that. So then the fabric has a chance to say, "Hey," and you're not feeling the other people's energy, you're feeling the fabric's energy. So is that way too far out there?
No, I think it's probably good for this group and for those of you who are beginning to learn about this. I want to share with you one of my personal experiences that two actually. One is that and this isn't so much an experience, but understand that there may be going there. How does this want to come through? Okay, so we're talking about material, but we've also been talking about crystals and going into crystal stores, antique stores, whatever the case is, right? Understand, and this can even go with Maria and her clothing. Like it was this size, and this is who she was at that size, and this is who she is at this size, right? That there is often an energy attached, possibly that could be ourself or a family member, like for instance, that family member that maybe couldn't go into the crystal store had this conflicting emotions because this family member of theirs was like this, and this family member of them was like that, and they didn't know how to react. So that's really influential in what's happening when you're going into crystal stores as well. Talking about Gentrie here now, how beautiful is that when your material is calling to you like that? Now, I haven't personally had experiences like that in fabric stores, but I have when I've gone into a woo-woo type store that's selling oracle cards and tarot, where I was going in looking specifically for a deck and put like 6 or 7 onto the counter, picked up one, and it was like I felt its heart energy connecting with mine in a way that it's impossible to explain. Okay, literally impossible to explain. Put this card deck down, picked up the next one, and this next one literally felt as though it was actually outside of the building. That's how unattached from me it felt. So
Right.
this again is like what Gentrie's saying. It's that awareness. It's that when you start to make a connection, like she connected in that somebody told her, and this is one of the things I keep telling my community is if somebody tells you something that's positive, grasp a hold of that and go into that. And that's what she did. Somebody told her that they loved how she felt when she had Gentrie's quilt around her. And look at what has unfolded since then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kitty has a question or comment. Should be able to find it now. I clicked the ask to unmute button. There she is.
I'm on the phone and I'm pushing it and all it keeps taking me to is background. So, oh, it's probably swipe right. Um, this conversation is absolutely fascinating because I'm so much more aware that everything is a living entity.
Mm.
So when we walk into a store, we're walking into whether it's a crystal store or the mall store, we're in I'm, I'm laughing because my dog's scratching its bowl right now. It needs water. Talk about a living entity. It wants water right now at this moment. Um, and so it's really interesting, Gentry, as I listen to you talk about the quilt, it's its own living entity that people are interacting with. And the more I think about that concept as I travel, everything, it's like meeting, there's a whole other, water. It started with finding out that water is a living entity and that, trees. And so stores become um, living entities that you're interacting with. And just like there have been stores recently that I've walked in to and turned around and went, nope, like it's not a person I want to meet, an entity I want to meet at this moment. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just so I'm absolutely fascinated about you're creating these entities that people can wrap themselves with, that you're having whole conversations with. And um, do you ever like just walk away? Are you really tired after this?
There's, not really, because when you're channeling the energy, it's working with your body. It's not your, it is your energy, but it's not stealing your energy. Going, that energy you're channeling is also replenishing the energy you're using. So it's a give and take. I'm one of the people at a quilt retreat that I quilt from the time I get there till 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm up at 8 o'clock again the next morning and I'm quilting. I mean, I get very little because I feed off that energy. It gives me energy to be able to do this work and revel in that joy and that energetic of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if you're interacting as an entity when you're at the retreat, it's somebody you
Right.
want to spend time with. So that makes actually to literally the detriment of getting your own sleep.
Right. Right. And even when I'm at home, if I start quilting in the evening, I'll be up till midnight. quilting, and I'll have to tell myself to stop and go to bed. You have to get up in the morning. You have a job. I do have a day job. So I literally have to tell myself, stop, go to bed. You need to get sleep, because I feed off that energy. And there's even fabrics that I buy that it takes me a long time to cut them up and make a quilt because I love that fabric. I mean, I look at it and I just want to just snuggle with it just the way it is because it's just like, it's so beautiful and it has makes me feel so good just hanging out with it. And then, finally I end up, I'm like, okay, I got to make this quilt. So then I have to cut it up and
Do and the other question I have is, do they ever have smells to you? Not just the fabric smell, but like take you somewhere else that way? Because there's so many aspects, visceral, touch. So I was just curious, has smell ever been one of them?
I don't have smells with quilts. The only time I get smells with quilts if it's a used quilt. Because I get smells with spirits. When the spirits are trying to, I smell is a big one for me. Like I'll smell something and I'll be like, where is that coming from? Why am I smelling that? And it'll be a spiritual energy around, that's trying to communicate with you. So, fabric itself, new fabric, never had a smell experience with it. It usually ends up taking on whatever smells in my house or around me or so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kitty. I just wanted to come back to something you said there that about how you purchase a piece of material, and then it sits, meaning that it's not ready to be called upon to be made into something. I remember purchasing this beautiful, it's this orange color, and on it are these black silhouettes of animals like bear and elk and just power animals. And when I did go to create something with it, it actually has ended up being my tabletop for when I'm doing ceremony. And there's actually one edge of it that has requested, this material requested that it remains unfinished, so that it has that freedom flow to go in and out. There's something about that unfinished seam that is so very important for this piece of material. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yep. Have you ever had a block and not able to finish a quilt?
There you go.
Ever explored what that block was? Why can't I finish this quilt? Why can't I finish this painting? What is wrong? It's an energetic block. Something, what I find is either the pattern's not in sync with the fabric. There's something off in the pattern, and the fabric's like, nope, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And I know I'm giving the fabric a personal life, but that's truly how it feels to me. That's how I read it, is that the fabric's like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that pattern. And you have to stop, regroup, and resituate and figure out, I need to do something else different here. And then all of a sudden, poof, it's done. The quilt's done, it's beautiful, and it's gone on to the next person that it needs to go to. So
Thank you so much. Gentrie has a beautiful gift, 5 tips to clear your space. So yes, we are definitely been talking about energetic quilting and the magic of material and creating with that. However, as I mentioned, it goes so far beyond that. It's the art, it's the painting, it's the poetry. It could be anything. So Gentrie's beautiful gift is 5 tips to clear your space. Gentrie, there's one last thing here. I have a painting that isn't finished, but it feels like what I need to finish this isn't here yet. So patience until I'm called upon to finish it. Exactly. Is there any last words that you'd like to leave with us, or anything that you want to kind of give us as advice?
just be open. You know, it's hard sometimes in the world we live in today to be open to things coming in because we do shut ourselves down so much. And trying to be, because you never know where inspiration is going to come from. You know, inspiration could be a billboard when you're walking down the street or a pattern in a crack in the sidewalk. I mean, just being observant of what's around you and being open to that message coming through, you know, and you may not know what it is at the time, but then when you're looking at something 3 days later and you think, oh, that design would look really cool there, you know, and something you saw weeks ago that you thought, oh, I really like that, you know, take a picture of it with your cell phone.
Love it. Love it. Thank you again, Gentry. To be able to share you out and hear you speak about this from your heart with such passion, brings up a lot of emotion in me. So I just love that you were here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, so much for allowing me this opportunity. So.
Okay.